Use the pause button on your player if you need longer to read the following screens, and the play button to continue. In this movie tutorial, we'll look at how to write responses for graphs in the IELTS Academic Task 1 Writing. The first part looks at the important points to look for in the task. The second part shows a model task response, and the third part provides response comments. Before you start, we also have a sheet with the task image and the model response. To download the sheet, click the link below the movie. In this task, you are asked to summarize a graph about the main sources of news in the USA by reporting the main features and making comparisons. From the information in this graph, you are required to write at least 150 words in not more than 20 minutes. There is a lot of data to observe and describe in this task because there are two distinct user groups, 2 time periods and 4 types of news sources. The tendency to overuse figures in your task must be avoided, so selecting the main points is vital. The increased use of the internet for accessing news is a key area that needs discussion. The only other news source that has increased percentages in the 10-year period is radio in the 65 years and over group. This should certainly be noted. The continued use of television for both groups is also a key point. Although falling during the period in question, in the younger group, television becomes less used than the internet for news in 2011, but for the older group, television remains the most important source of news. In addition, the continuing popularity of newspapers for accessing news in the older group should be commented on. It would be a mistake to deal with 2001 and 2011 in separate paragraphs because the focus is on the changes that occurred over time as it affects different media. It is the media which is the defining factor. Owing to the nature of the task, your text will include the language of comparison because you are comparing 2 groups and different media, and language to describe changes because you have movement over time.
Before we move on, have you heard about our popular IELTS ebooks? They're available from all major ebook retailers. Go to myenglishexam.com and click on the ebook link to find out more.
Now listen to and read each of the paragraphs in the model response.
The bar charts show the number of people, expressed as a percentage, who obtain the news from 4 types of media, namely the internet, newspaper, radio and television, over a 10-year period. 2 segments of the population are chosen: a young group aged 18 to 29 and an older group of those 65 and above. The most significant trend to arise from the data is that people in both age groups are switching to the internet as a source of the news. In the younger group, the popularity of the internet as a media source increased very sharply, from 18% to 65%, while in the older group it jumped from a very low 1% to 14%. This is in sharp contrast to all the other media channels, newspaper, radio and television, which experienced falls in their popularity, with the single exception of radio, that became slightly more popular in the 65 years and older group. Television as a news source remained popular throughout the decade. In fact, for the older group, it was still the main way they received their news, but dropped from 86% in 2001 to 79% in 2011. Even for the younger group, television remains an important source, but significantly, the internet had by 2011 overtaken newspapers as the main method of accessing news. By 2011, 65% of the younger group used the internet, in comparison to newspapers at 52%, whereas for the older group, newspapers and television were still more frequent ways to access news compared to the internet.
Language describing the change in comparison is varied and well managed in the text. Examples include increased very sharply, jumped from a low, experienced falls, dropped, overtaken, and slightly more popular, more frequent ways. Variety is evident in describing the time period, over a 10-year period, throughout the decade. Variety is found when referring to groups: older group, younger group, young group age 18-29, older group of those 65 years and above. The text flows smoothly because there are several examples of relative clauses introduced by which and that, and examples of linking words like while, but, whereas, which show the writer's ability to manage complex sentences well. It should be noted that the text is not flooded with figures, but on the contrary, only a few figures are used for main points. This is quite acceptable, but it would count against you if no actual data at all was used in your text. You can get more help with your IELTS and our ebooks from myenglishexam.com.